New Orleans had always lived through sound. The city breathed in trumpet cries, exhaled piano blues, and let its heartbeat drum through narrow streets soaked in sweat, sorrow, and celebration. Jazz was not entertainment here, it was identity. It told stories of pain and survival, of nights that refused to end and mornings that came too soon. But the year the Axeman spoke, music stopped being a choice. The letter appeared in the newspapers like a curse carved into paper. It claimed to be written by the Axeman of New Orleans, and its message was simple and terrifying. Any house that did not play jazz music on a specific night would face death. No one knew if the words were truth or madness, but New Orleans did not dare test them. Fear has a way of becoming law when blood has already been spilled. That night, the city sounded wrong. Every house played jazz, but none of it felt alive. Gramophones spun like nervous hands. Records scratched under shaking needles, and music filled the air not with joy, but with obligation. People did not listen to melodies. They listened for silence. A single pause felt heavier than a scream. If the music stopped, even for a breath, death might knock. Sleep became impossible. Families lay awake counting seconds between notes, watching lamps flicker, praying electricity would not fail. Children learned a new meaning of sound. Jazz no longer meant laughter or dance. It meant survival. The city was no longer free. It was synchronized, trapped in a single rhythm dictated by fear. No one had ever seen the Axeman. He was faceless, voiceless, yet more powerful than the police who patrolled the streets. Badges and guns offered comfort, not certainty. The real authority now lived in a letter, in a threat, in the collective panic of a city held hostage by an unseen hand. Newspapers printed the words again and again until the message burned itself into the minds of the people. The killer did not need to strike every night. Fear did the work for him. In poorer neighborhoods, fear was louder. Families who could barely afford food scraped together coins to buy broken records and second-hand gramophones. The music that played was warped and wounded, like a cry struggling to survive. Jazz wept from those houses, distorted and desperate, but it played, because silence was more expensive than dignity. For musicians, the humiliation cut deepest. Jazz had been their voice, their rebellion, their truth. Now it was a shield, a superstition, a forced ritual. Some refused to play, claiming that music born from fear was already dead. Others played louder than ever, flooding the streets with defiance, daring the Axeman to listen. Every note carried anger. Every chord trembled with resistance. Yet even rebellion bowed when life itself felt fragile. In a quiet part of the city lived a young woman whose father had once been a respected jazz musician. He taught her that music only mattered when it was honest. When the threat came, he said something that terrified her more than the Axeman. If we play because we're afraid, then the music dies before we do. One night, they turned off the gramophone. Their house remained silent while the rest of the city screamed in sound. The night felt endless. Every creak of the floor, every breath, felt like a final warning. The daughter stayed awake, staring into darkness, waiting for a punishment that never came. Morning arrived. They were alive, but the city looked at them differently, as if survival itself were a crime. Disobedience, even unpunished, had become dangerous. As days passed, fear mutated. Neighbors watched neighbors. People measured each other's volume, judging loyalty by sound. A house that played too softly became suspicious. Silence was no longer peace. It was guilt. New Orleans had turned into a prison without walls, where everyone was both guard and inmate. Then one night, a storm swallowed the city. Lightning tore the sky open, and the power failed. Gramophones fell silent. Jazz vanished. The city froze, certain this was the end, that the Axeman would finally claim his due. But nothing happened. No screams. No blood. Only rain and breath and waiting. Morning exposed the truth. The Axeman was never just a man. He was an idea, a demonstration of how easily fear can rule when people surrender their choices. He had proven that terror, once accepted, does not need constant violence. It governs itself. Jazz returned to New Orleans, but it was changed. Every melody carried a memory. Every note remembered a time when music had been reduced to permission to live. The city survived, but it was no longer innocent. Because when fear becomes law, freedom doesn't disappear all at once. It fades quietly between the notes of a song that no one is playing by choice anymore.